I do. And Scott, I just want to separate. I mean, fundamentally, I think this is one of the best companies out there. It's really in the sweet spot. I mean, Josh and Shannon have articulated it very well. Where you want to be is where Microsoft is. My question is, and just as we saw with financials, is you've got a great setup going into it. Expectations are very high for the technology sector. And I think any type of blip or expectations coming down, future earnings, these are not cheap stocks. I realize, interest rates are at the lowest point, the fundamentals are strong, but you do have expectations that are very high and you could get a pullback. Having said that, you get a pullback, I think a Microsoft to me is an opportunity that you go back in and you buy some, because it doesn't face some of the other pressures, some of the other things we're facing with regulatory issues and what's going to happen in Congress. So it is one of my favorite companies. It is something that I like to buy if I get the opportunity to pull back. So it's kind of like a mixed blessing. I do want it to have a really good quarter, but it could have some negative consequences for the sector.
If it did, Jim Lebenthal, the farmer's with us too today. You'd be snapping that up too on a dip if there is one, Jim?
I would, but I want to add this perspective, whether it's Microsoft or Apple or Facebook, these stocks have kind of treaded water. I mean, you go back 6 months ago, go back to the end of August. Let's take Apple just as an example. It was $137 a share, and today it's $143 a share. So that's not quite 6 months. Let's call it 5 months that Apple's up 4%. So the perspective I'm trying to give here is, yes, we can look at whether it's Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, and say, oh my goodness, these are the tech stalwarts. They've come so far. You have to recognize that over the recent past, they really haven't done that much. And I think what that sets up for is a return to good growth, not the growth you've seen in 2019, 2020. I don't think these things are going to be the stock leaders, but I think they're going to be good returners this year.
You don't think they're going to be the leaders as they have been in the past?
I don't. And, Shannon made an excellent point, as she usually does, about the cyclical trade has faded in the last week and a half. I suspect that that's a pause, not a reversion. Now, of course, we've had so many head fakes over the last 5 years, one could be forgiven for asking. But I think where the leadership this year is going to come from is from the cyclicals and from the small caps. I think the pause we're seeing in the last week and a half is a setup for good earnings. And that's the fundamentals. If you talk about a GM, or a Viacom or a Cleveland Cliffs, I think earnings will validate the large returns we've had recently. Let me be clear, Apple, Microsoft, they're going to do fine. I just don't think they're going to be the top of the leaderboard this year.
I'm wondering, I wish I could see Josh's reaction when you make that statement, and I'm going to go to you because do you agree with that?
What, that cyclicals could be leadership next year?
That tech won't be the leader this year.
It doesn't have to be. I think it'll do better than a lot of sectors. I think there are going to be moments where the cyclical trade really shines. Like we're going to get J&J vaccine data next week. If it's decent, like efficacy of 70% or above, you know what they're going to do. They're going to take those industrial stocks and ramp them to the moon. You know that already. All the reopening stocks, all the very economically sensitive stuff. So you know there are going to be moments like that over the next 6 months, 1 year, however much longer this plays out for. So Jim could absolutely be right. I don't think you want to have a portfolio that's totally devoid of cyclicality. The thing is, though, those stocks are really not that big. There are a handful of them that are of decent size. The market, if it's going to be a good market for the S&P 500 next year, is going to be driven by consumer discretionary, tech, healthcare. There's really no way around that. And as those sectors do, that'll be the overall tone of the tape. But I think there's going to be a lot of ways to win in the coming year. So I wouldn't fight with Labes on that.